Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander review for Magic the Gathering. Today we are talking about Toshiro Umezawa from the Betrayers of Kamigawa set, who is a legendary human samurai. It has a power and toughness of 2/2, and it has a mana value of 3, 1 generic and 2 black mana. It has one of my favorite keywords, if you don't know this already, Bushido 1. Which simply reads, whenever this creature blocks or becomes blocked, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then it has a triggered ability. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you may cast target instant card from your graveyard. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. So it does have a little bit of a replacement effect in its ability. But this is a great card, and I can't wait to talk more about it. So, a couple things rules-wise. No overall card rulings for this commander, but just quick reminders. Bushido, if you don't know what Bushido is, it does the +1/+1 whenever it blocks or becomes blocked. But it is important to note, this does not trigger based on the number of creatures blocking it, like Rampage. This just cares that Toshiro blocks or becomes blocked, period. So if you want to get multiple triggers of Bushido, you need to have multiple combat steps. Essentially is how that's going to work. And then secondly, the second ability with triggering is the creatures don't have to die from the spells you're casting. You can have like an assassin that taps to destroy a creature. You can have like a board wipe sorcery that destroys creatures, but somehow you keep Toshiro alive. There's lots of ways that this can trigger, but once it is triggered, you can then cast an instant card from your graveyard. And we're going to get into more of how crazy that can be in just a second here. But it essentially gives those cards flashback, which then of course, when they would be used, they go to exile. Alright, card I chose to synergize with this commander is Malicious Affliction, and I chose this card for a couple reasons. There are a lot of cards out there that don't necessarily have the morbid keyword, but there are cards out there that care about when other creatures die. So being able to play those in a deck like this is going to amplify their power very effectively. And this is an instant, so not only can it be amplified by a creature dying, but it's an instant, so when it's in the graveyard, you can kill a creature, then cast it from the graveyard, and then it will still get the morbid trigger, which is really cool. And this one allows you to copy this spell when you do that. And it, of course, can destroy target non-black creatures, so it can be used itself as a way to remove creatures, which is phenomenal. The deck that I am building for this commander is what I'm calling, and I don't know if other people call it this, but I'm calling this a Death Slinger deck, where the deck focuses on me being a Spell Slinger deck, but I'm in mono black, and all of my instants and sorceries focus on destroying my opponent's creatures in some way, shape, or form. And most of them are going to be instants, so that way I can cast them from my graveyard, and then not only be able to kill more creatures, but be able to trigger my Magecraft creatures or my other cards that care about creatures dying, which is going to be really fun. A popular deck idea on EDH Rec, it focuses more on the broader scope of destroying creatures, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of this video. There are other ways that you can destroy your opponent's creatures. Massacre Worm is a great way to get rid of a bunch of weenie creatures or a bunch of small token creatures. Grim Return is a fantastic card in this deck because it's going to allow you to steal your opponent's creatures, so that would be fun to look at, as well as some other classic cards like Reanimate. Since we are going to be destroying our opponent's creatures in some way, shape, or form, we might as well steal them as well. And then lastly, and I'm very excited about this deck idea, let me know in the comments below what you guys think, but this is an adventure deck right here. We don't have a ton of mono black adventure specific stuff or a ton of mono black omen specific stuff, But we have this awesome concept that's been brought to us from Dragonstorm Tarkir, as well as the several iterations of Eldraine, where we have creatures or permanents, but I'm going to mostly focus on creatures, that you can cast and they go someplace else. And the reason why I specify they go someplace else is because with Toshiro's ability, remember it says when that spell would go to graveyard, exile it instead. What we can do to bypass that rule, and a great example is Murderous Rider / Swift End, is Swift End is an instant. If a creature dies, we can then cast Swift End from the graveyard because Swift End is an instant. We can cast Swift End from the graveyard and then do its thing, which will then trigger Toshiro again, which is really cool. But what we can do is follow the adventure rules, which says then exile this card. You may cast the creature later from exile. So what we do is instead of putting that instant into the graveyard, which then Toshiro would exile because of its ruling, we would put it to exile from the get-go on an adventure. From there, we can cast the Murderous Rider and then continue to go on. Now, granted, Murderous Rider does have a little thing here where you can put it at the bottom, where you do put it at the bottom of its owner's library, but the idea is that there are adventures and maybe a few omens. I need to look more into that once I do the deck list for this idea. That are instants that you can then cast, and then instead of putting them into exile because of Toshiro, you put them in the exile because of an adventure that you can then play later and then redo the process over and over again. Or for Omen, it shuffles them into your library so then you can draw them again and repeat the cycle over and over and over. And then in a deck like this, since we're going to be playing a lot of stuff from our graveyard, which can be creatures, we can put things like Desecrated Tomb that care about when our creatures leave the graveyard to make an army of bats for either offense or defense. So this is a spell slinger, permanent adventure omen deck idea, and I love this idea. I'd love to hear your guys' comments below what you guys think, but I think this is really fun. And that's going to do it for Toshiro Umezawa. Really cool commander, and I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, there are some combo possibilities with this commander, so that is really cool to consider. And there's a lot of deck ideas on EDH Rec that you can go look at to build your own fun Toshiro deck with. Very popular, that's why it has the rank of S, and it's a really cool card. So thank you guys again so much for watching. Thank you guys again so much for your patience. I know these videos are getting intermingled with my Let's Plays while I'm getting on top of making and continuously getting videos out to you guys, which has been crazy this summer, but it's what happens, and I really appreciate your guys' patience. Also, go ahead and check out some of my older videos because I am adding the deck lists to those videos. I'm going to try and figure out a more streamlined way to do that, but in the meantime, I'm getting as many out as I can. And of course, as a reminder, as always, once we end this set, I am going to do a little change to try and make these a little faster, a little shorter videos, so I can get more out to you guys more quickly. So thank you guys again so much for watching, for all of your support, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!